Welcome to the live event. Today is a pilot. I'm doing a pilot because I've got an event tomorrow morning. I'm pulling it all together. What I'm doing now is just fleshing out some of the technology because I have two streaming systems going on. I've got my TikTok streaming from the TikTok app. And I also have StreamYard so that I can go to other platforms as well, like Facebook and YouTube. Tomorrow, what I'll be doing is promoting this same event, but I want to work through my timing. I did it Friday, and I was a little bit long. I wanted to be at 8 minutes per exercise, and I was coming in more like 11 and 12. So today, I moved things around. So I changed the order, and that should allow me to get through the thing a little bit better. Now, hold on a second. I just saw my phone battery's down. I'm also going to test having people come on stage from TikTok, and you can also come on stage from StreamYard. And so what I'm going to do is put this link, if I can, let's see, invite people, copy invite link, and go back to the comments. I will put the link in StreamYard, and so you can catch that. That's showing up in the Facebook and the YouTube pages. And then, of course, if you want to join on TikTok, we can do the invite. So I'm watching the chat box over here. Right now, there's no one coming in. I didn't announce this live or anything, so that doesn't surprise me. And the other thing I'll do, let's see. So this did not work on one of my Facebook pages. Let's try it again. And then I also have a call-in set up. So that call-in is, I'll turn it on when that time comes. I'll give you a phone number, and that's to test the call-in. I may not use the call-in on Monday, but it's a good way for me to test it. I do need to plug my phone in that we'll be calling in on because I can see the battery is low on it, so that would be a bit of a problem. So let me just do that. And yeah, I'll keep it informal, but I'm also going to run it the same way I plan to run it tomorrow. For those of you who just joining, I'm doing a pilot for tomorrow's event. I need to do a dry run. I've already done the first pilot, and I came out, my timings were a little bit long, and so I'm fleshing that out. But I also want to, I was only on TikTok Friday, and now I have my StreamYard running as well. So that's going to be, let me get my volume. Looks like my volume's a little bit loud. And that's the other thing is, when you run with multiples, you do have some challenges with the sound. Let me see if I got, nope, not getting anything there. Let me try my interface just to see how the sound is coming in. Now, what I'm doing is recording as well, so I'll be able to test it in post. And, I see. So this is, I can turn up the volume. Let's turn up the volume. Volume. There you go. Okay. So now I'm hearing it in the headphones, which is fine. I don't like talking with the headphones on, though, but I'll have to put them on. Let me see if this changes anything. Testing. No, I'll have to put the headphones on when I start having people come on stage because I don't want to have it interfere. All right, so what we're doing today, the objective here is to help people understand how to apply neuroplasticity. There's a lot of information about neuroplasticity, but it lives in silos because that's the way peer-reviewed science works. So I'm going to start off by talking about what neuroplasticity is and what it isn't, and then I'll jump right into an exercise to stop saying ums, likes, us. We call these word whiskers, and it's amazingly easy to stop saying them. It always surprises me how few people take advantage of that. Looks like I'm a little hot. My mic is still too hot. Let me try there. That looks a little bit better. Okay, that is what we're going to do. I'm going to, and we'll literally do the real live exercise. Now, the objective is to get this thing done, the exercise portion of getting rid of ums. I want to get that down to 8 minutes. Like I said, yesterday I went long. So for those of you just now joining, this is a pilot, but I'm running it the same way I plan to run it tomorrow in the actual event. And we will be going through the steps in the process. So starting right now, let's set the timer. And I need to add my timer on the screen. So this timer, we're going to set it at 12 minutes. So starting right now, and the idea is that I'm going to start another one every 12 minutes. This way, if people are joining in, they'll see on the screen, which is not showing up yet, but it'll be this screen is what people will see on TikTok. You already see it. Now you see it on my Facebook and YouTube as well. This is the screen they'll see. They'll see the clock. And every 15 or so minutes, I'll be starting a new one. I say 15. I want to do it in 12, and that's why I'm running this test right now. All right, and we are hot. Not that kind of hot, but hot as in acting, the actual testing of it. So first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about what neuroplasticity is. I've been talking about neuroplasticity for a few years now. I post a lot about it, and I have conversations. Anytime I'm out and about, I have conversations with people because I want to understand how people think in terms of neuroplasticity. And one of the other things I'm watching in this pilot is how my technology is doing just with respect to demand. I've got multiple cameras going on because I have to have cameras and audio for each interface. So what it's not mindset. It's not positive thinking. A lot of people think they already know what neuroplasticity is. Maybe they've gone through some neurolinguistic programming, law of attraction. It all starts to sound the same, but all of those things that you might think it is, like I'm saying, the mindset, positive, mental attitude, manifestation, NLP, even some of the hacks. Hacks don't work, though, I'll tell you that. They don't work long term because of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is set up to be consistent stability at status quo. And by definition, hacks are new, and the system neutralizes them. But these things, whether it's mindset, positive thinking, manifestation, NLP, they do impact neuroplasticity, but indirectly. And it's a big deal because one of the reasons why these don't work is because they don't take into consideration that neuroplasticity does not work well under stress. And the big reason why they're not working, one is people try to use them when they're stressed out. You may have heard the sympathetic nervous system, et cetera, but that's beyond the scope of here. So traditional neuroplasticity, biological rewiring, most of your traditional neuroplasticity content out there is really about the status quo, rehab, homeostasis, status quo, versus allostasis, which is stability on an upward trajectory. And it tends to be a little bit slower and indirect because when you get into neuroplasticity, you don't usually see deep practice talked about. They're talking about the parts of the brain, like if you look at emotional intelligence, et cetera, it's parts of the brain, and you can't activate parts of the brain. I can't actively activate my amygdala, for example. I can't stop my amygdala from firing, but they're all neurons. The brain is all neurons, so we're going to be able to make those adjustments anyway. And then allostatic neuroplasticity, which is what I'm talking about, stability on an upward trajectory. This is my dynamic leadership framework that I'm fleshing out, and that's why I go live here to get more conversations about it. That's why I talk to so many people to see how things are landing. Network level action, the big difference in what I talk about with neuroplasticity is that I'm focusing on the network. I'm not talking about the parts of the brain. It's still the same thing, but we're focusing on the network of neurons. And then applied transformation, merging peer-reviewed science with actionable executive frameworks. The point I'm making there is I use only peer-reviewed science. Now, peer-reviewed science is nothing new. In fact, the line neurons that fire together wire together is from peer-reviewed science in 1949. That's Hebb's law. So we've known about neurons for a long time. What's missed is that it wasn't applied to cognitive processing until 1990. So it was always thought to just apply to physical skills, using it in athletics, muscle memory. Turns out the same way neurons work with physical activity, they work with cognitive processing. Right, so what we're going to do is for the next, let me just reset this right now because I've got enough people in there and I'll see where I end up. I'd like to be able to end the main portion, the exercise, with 4 minutes on the clock. If I do that, then we're good. We're going to rewire your brain in 10 minutes. A new neuroplasticity demo starts every 12 to 15 minutes. Eliminate your word whiskers. You'll have to do the exercise. This is an active process because it's not intellectual. You can't think about it and have neuroplasticity happen. With skills you can, but for this, the level we're talking about now, you have to do the action. Speaking activates neural pathways. Thinking does not activate neural pathways. Now that's nuance, but for the sake of this situation here, I see. Is it like an electric muscle group? I like that. So what's going through the neural pathways is energy. And there's a lot of parallels between energy, law of conservation, and what happens in the network of neurons. So yes, I would say you could think of it that way, but rather than look at it as activating muscles, when you think about muscle memory, we're talking about activating neural pathways, and those neural pathways activate the muscle. You would know that if you thought about it, right? Muscles don't have memory. It's the nervous system that has the memory. The big breakthrough is that it applies to cognitive processing. So all the work around habits, it's all back to neurons, myelination, synaptogenesis, which we'll get into. The 3 types of habits, and I'll also be talking about why habit change seems difficult and what you can do about it. There's 3 types of habits. Behavioral habits, these are done with the senses. Things you do with your hands, biting your nails, maybe idiosyncrasies, quirks, etc. Those are easier to change than reactive habits. Reactive habits get you off course. This is when somebody's pushing your buttons, when somebody's getting triggered. So muscle memory is the mind's training routine. So this is what's interesting when I talk about neuroplasticity, is that it's because we see it through the lens of the old subconscious as a mind. And when you look at what neuroplasticity is, what the network of neurons is, it's a network of neurons, literally, it's not a mind. So I would say, it says, so muscle memory is the mind's training routine. I would parse it out. I would say that the network of neurons is the brain's way of processing. The reason I say it that way is because the mind is not the brain. The mind is our conscious side. In fact, that's the next slide. But let me just finish this. The reactive, it gets you off course. That's where people get triggered. Reactive habits are very difficult because you're already into fight or flight if you're reacting, regardless of whether it's like a phobia level thing or just a concern because you saw an email that's going to make you have to do a lot more work. And then identity habits and personality habits, they're hard to change because that's at the construct level. You don't change constructs at the construct level. You have to change them at the elements level, which means you have to have a handle on changing habits. So let's get into this. I love the question. So muscle memory is the mind's training routine. Let's look at it from the beginning. The central nervous system sends a signal to the neural pathway, and that there's a neurotransmitter called glutamate that enables that to happen. The neural pathway, the habits become those neural pathways that are the path of least resistance. That's essentially what a habit is. We have 100 billion neurons. We have trillions of connections because each neuron is connected to thousands of other neurons. So that's trillions of associations and connections. Habits become the path of least resistance. So if you are doing a habit like muscle memory, you know muscle memory, if you've done any athletics, that's happening well before the conscious mind can engage. It's the same way with cognitive processing. One of the reasons why habits are so difficult to break or seem so is because they're happening over here in the network of neurons. So the neural pathway fires. The ones that fire as the path of least resistance, that becomes your habit. And guess what? This is where cognitive biases kick in. Virtually everyone I talk to has heard of cognitive biases, and they know a few, they can rattle a few off, and they understand them. Almost no one I talk to, less than 1 in 200 people I talk to have actually heard of allostasis, and that's a big part of it. Cognitive biases happen over here. This is why it's so difficult to combat them, because we combat them or attempt to after our conscious mind kicks in. Our conscious mind kicks in. If you look up, it'll say you have a half-second reaction time on the conscious mind. It's not like it's just waiting, sitting, doing nothing. That half second is the network of neurons firing off. Look, 11 million bits per second is what it fires at, the network of neurons. It's all these associations. If you've ever fallen off of something, as you're going down, it's like your life flashes before your eyes. My view is that's the system looking for, how do I get out of this thing? It's flashing before your eyes. That network of neurons, 11 million bits per second. The conscious mind, only 50 bits per second. This is why once you're triggered, it's very difficult to get that reined in, because you're reacting to reactions. You're no longer reacting to external, you're reacting to reactions. This is going to come into play. I'll bring this in, but I wanted to answer those questions because they're great. When I get to answer questions, that's when the deeper understanding comes in, because everyone is looking at it differently through their own lens, and most of the lenses are from a standpoint of conscious mind. So another reason why it's difficult is because conscious mind, we think in words, processing words. The network of neurons, which is not a mind, is processing signal. And then there's a part that transfers the signal, converts the signal into something that the conscious mind can perceive. And I call this the present moment, because when you lose the present moment, you are now having your reactions become your response. And the reactions are based on the past. Another way to quickly understand what's going on with neuroscience is to think about it in terms of, we've been 300,000 years ago, the human species were hunter-gatherers. In that 300,000 years, only the last couple of percentage points of that 300,000, 10,000 years or so, have we been interacting with machines and leverage and all that, let alone technology and artificial intelligence. So 98, 99% of our hunter-gatherer years, that evolution has been based on hunter-gatherer, which is why we go into fight or flight so quickly, and fight or flight is treated like the tiger on the Serengeti, the proverbial tiger. Now, what does it have to do with ums and uhs? Well, ums and uhs live over here. Now, this is my 1 second model. The conscious mind is the last half second, and the first half second, 500 milliseconds, would be the first half. This is the unconscious portion, the subconscious. This is what we thought of as the subconscious mind, but it's the network of neurons processing. There's also another 1/10 of a second called pre-listening. So we have the pre-listening phase, which is the prediction. Central nervous system and brain is a prediction machine. And by the way, for those of you just now joining, we're going to be talking about ums and uhs in a few moments here. I'll go into the exercise. In fact, there's 2 more slides. I'll go into the exercise. You will be able to eradicate your uhs and ums. The way it works, though, is we do the scaffolding today, and neuroplasticity happens overnight. So if you look to see, did the habit take place, today it's probably not going to be so. You'll be aware of it, but the real work happens after you sleep. And then, although we're going to do the heavy lifting today, you'll still need to do like 2 to 3 minutes of practice during the week. It's the same way if you were training a dog. You get the dog to sit and everything's fine, and then you next step is to get it to stay. So you say stay and you walk away. The dog follows you, right? What do? You turn around, you put up your hand, and you say stay. And the dog sees the hand. After a few iterations, it stays. But then you get so far away, it moves again. You got to go back, right? Stay. And then you go around the corner so it can't see you. Stay. You have to repeat that. That's what you're doing for the first week. Once the week is done, you will have created a new path of least resistance. And that path of least resistance will be a pause, not an or an This is another way of looking at it. Again, this is the first half second plus the 10th. So I call it the first 600 milliseconds. These are different zones. In this first zone, the perpetual question zone, the readiness, this is where the cognitive biases live. This is in the middle. This is maybe some cognitive biases live here, some other habit patterns, some of your triggers, they live here. Over here is where we're dealing with the uhs and the ums. By the way, the reticular activating system kicks in here. So when you set goals and you have intentions, the reticular activating system is looking for those things right here well before the conscious mind. Conscious mind comes in a half a second later. Now, what we'll do first, well, these are the slides. So I actually am, I like talking about this, and that's one of my challenges. Let's see if any other questions came in. No, and we'll have a time. If anybody wants to join, what I'll do is after I finish with this exercise, you can join me on stage or on the panel, and I'll also be looking more at the chat and have some answers to your questions. Now, why do you use filler words and verbal pauses? I've done this enough with people in real life, which is why I'm able to do it here. Normally in coaching, I have to ask you questions and find out what's going on, but I've done this enough that you'll be able to connect the dots if I get it wrong. But it's something like this. Elementary school kids sitting there, the teacher asks a question, kid looks up at the ceiling trying to think of the answer. The teacher says, "What are you looking at the ceiling for?" The answer's not on the ceiling. That kind of stings, right, for a 6 or 7-year-old. So they realize by watching and looking at other kids that if you, by the way, underneath the clock, it says safety. If you can't see that, let's see if that shows up. Well, anyway, yeah. It shows up. Perfect. So they learn that if I say the teacher gives me some grace. They know I'm answering, and so they don't zing me with the ceiling thing. That's how it starts, one way. And as I said, it's different for everybody, but it's something like this. In fact, I think some of the people who, a lot of times when I was mentoring in corporate world, a lot of the A students that I was mentoring, A students from school, and then they come into the workplace, they would say a lot. And it's because they're looking for the answer. Remember when I talked about how fast this processing happens over here? See, when you catch it over here on this side, it's early, and that's the idea. When you catch it early, you have high impact, low effort. That little bit of quarter second as short as it is, the brain is searching that network of neurons and coming up with answers. So that does serve a purpose. It's allowing you to come up with an answer. But here's the thing people don't know. When you're verbalizing sound, when you're making a sound, that interferes with the brain processing to come up with those answers. The answers that you're coming up with are associations in the network of neurons. And the network of neurons side processes at 11 million bits per second. This is why it's so fast. You only need a quarter of a second. You don't even need a quarter of a second. You need an eighth of a second. This is why if you read from a teleprompter, you can have some of your attention on the next line. You could change your inflection points while on the fly while you're going. The point the reason I bring that up is because when you look at it through the lens of, okay, I get it. I'm saying because I want the answers to come to me. But then you realize that the verbalizing slows down the processing because it has to process that sound. You're much better off with a pause. So why do you use words and verbal pauses? To give yourself a chance to catch up. Do they have to be verbal? Absolutely not. And I would recommend they be silent, because when they're silent, you can do more things. Why do you want to change it? This is on you. I can't tell you your reason. And this is not about morality at all. If you don't want to stop saying ums, us, can you feel me? Then that's on you. I have nothing to do with that. I'm just offering this for those people who maybe want to go live and they're a little bit nervous about it, or maybe they realize that they're saying which is now going to happen because I'm making you aware of it. Since ums happen so early, right? They're happening here in the reaction formation section before the conscious mind. You don't even know you're saying them because the conscious mind comes in by giving the answer. It's become a part of your deal. I have a question. I've heard that prediction machine part a lot. Yeah, 100%. So the central nervous system in the brain is predicting what's coming. You walk into a room and you see a person, so this is going to be one of those meetings, Another day you walk in the room and see a person, oh, this is going to be a great meeting. It's always predicting. This gets to allostasis. If you look at weightlifters, bodybuilders, they have a big issue with the plateaus. They keep hitting these plateaus, and it's because the central nervous system is constantly predicting how much demand is going to come, how much demand are we going to face, and when it over predicts, it starts to peel back the neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitter is a high metabolic load for the brain, and it wants to be efficient. It makes less and less neurotransmitter, which is why the weightlifter gets the plateau. It's not the muscles that need the rest of the plateau, it's that the signal gets weaker. So what we're going to do with allostasis, which is stability on an upward trajectory, is we're constantly changing it up. That's what a good trainer will do with their clients. They change the routine before the efficiencies, homeostasis fits in. And by changing it up, the system makes neurotransmitter. One of the best examples I've ever seen and can come up with. It applies in dance, it applies in yoga, it applies in martial arts, it applies in military special ops. I went to Ranger School 40 years ago. We train the same way today, virtually the same way as we did back then, because it was based on the physical skill. Same thing with martial arts. But the reason I like the through hiker, the person hiking 3,000 miles, like from Mexico to Canada, that 3,000 miles is going to take them about 90 days. They'll start out doing 7, 8, maybe 9 miles a day, and they're putting in some effort. You can see they're focused on getting those 8, 9 miles a day. By the time they finish with the 90 days, they're like at 30 miles a day, and 30 miles a day, 5, 6, 10 days in a row. Why? And they don't look that different. It's not like they got muscular or skinny, because the signal was stronger. The signal kept adapting. We all know that the body adapts. Everybody's experienced that, but until you look at it through the lens of neuroplasticity, you don't really understand how can I apply it. We think it just has to happen. What I'm giving you with neuroplasticity is the levers. You have the levers that you can pull and push, the knobs you can turn to make this happen. And essentially there's 7 factors: intention, novelty, precision, balance, progression, intensity, and struggle at the edge of ability. When you get all 7 of those factors, and that's happening in hiking, and oddly enough, it happens in gaming. Most people know somebody who plays video games for hours and hours and hours. Same 7 apply: intention, novelty, precision, complexity or balance, progression, intensity or explosiveness, and struggle at the edge of ability. That's why you have the levels. Imagine a video game that started at level 10. People wouldn't have any interest, but level 1 is so easy. The dopamine kicks in, you get the win, and now you're into level 2. And that is life. That's through hiking, and that's how we create a workplace. For those of you in business, that's how you create a workplace that people enjoy working. This is what we mean when we say intrinsic motivation. The motivation comes from doing the activity. So why do you want to change it? That's up to you, but it could be something like you want to go live. Maybe you want to be better at doing your ads. Maybe you want to be on somebody's panel and you don't like to be the one who's saying and and also other word whiskers. It's not just and You listen to some of these panels and there's all sorts of things that people have put in as fillers while their brain catches up. And I guarantee you, many of them don't even know they're saying them. And you'll experience that. In fact, if you went and talked to somebody right now, you would hear yourself saying, because now your reticular activating system, which remember kicks in very early at the initial detection stage, is going to pick it up. I've heard that prediction machine a lot. I'm going to take over the world. Yes, you have superpower when you lean into the levers. What makes it so hard for people to understand it is that our learning has told us that it's a mind, especially if you're under 40, over 40. People under 40, at least they started learning about neurons, because we didn't know that neurons were applied to cognitive processing until the 1950s, but it didn't take hold until the 1990s when we had neuroimaging. The benefit of neuroimaging was that we could see the brain, how it rewired itself, what parts of the brain light up. That's how you are able to figure these things out. So the first thing, now we're doing the exercise. This, from here on, I'm not going to remind you, because I listened to my pilot from Friday and I was like scolding people. You got to do this. I can't see you, so I don't know if you're doing it, but I'm going to make one. My one PSA right now. for the next 3 steps, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 4 steps, we have to do the activity. If you don't do the activity, you're not activating the neural pathway. It would be like going to the physical therapist and they tell you about the exercise, but you never do it. You're not going to activate the neural pathway. So here's what we're going to do. The first thing, 10 or 15 seconds is all you need. If you have something to read, pick it up. If not, and if you're around other people and you can't talk, maybe take the phone outside and do this outside, just like being on the phone. In fact, you can make believe you're on the phone and just talk. But what I want you to do is give some narrative, make up something while you're speaking, and add pauses. So I'm going to give you something I'm working on myself. I'll demonstrate it. And it's going to be talking about the similarities between energy, like from performance motorcycle racing, performance riding and racing on a motorcycle, and neuroplasticity. It's random, but I want you to do your own. And if you have to, you can read from something. But just make believe you're on the phone and add the pauses, intentional pauses. And those pauses could be a second or 2 seconds. They don't have to be long. When I first started studying the neuroplasticity, I was seeing it and I was mapping it. I was mapping it to things I had experienced, whether it's ranger training, training with SEALs. So you see how I added those pauses in. Now, that's all you need to do. Go ahead and do this for 15 seconds. I'll start this up. Adding intentional pauses, and we're going to build on this. And just like I will build on my narrative, you'll build on whatever you're doing or talking about. So that's about 15 seconds there. Let's pause that. Next, we're going to leverage the pause. So instead of just pausing, so what we've done now, we're teaching ourselves to pause. We are starting a new neural pathway. We are making connections because we are connecting neurons with synapses. Remember, there's 100 billion of these things, the neurons. We're connecting a new pathway. And that new pathway is still weak. Now we're going to make it a little stronger. So I want you to create some emotion after the pause. So I'm going to continue with my narrative about uncovering this neuroplasticity. I didn't do anything having to do with discovering or creating neuroplasticity. What I bring to the table is a deep understanding that I was just doing pauses. Now watch what happens when I create emotion for the words that come after the pause. In other words, in my pause, that half-second pause or 1 second pause, I'm going to add emotion. I'm going to figure out how can I add some more words to inspire people. Watch the difference. It was the mapping of what I was learning about in neural change and neuroplasticity. And it was making sense because I could take it all the way back to like tennis tournaments and golf tournaments when I was working on performing under intense pressure. But the real breakthrough came when I applied it to motorcycle performance, riding, and racing. So I don't know if you could see it, but definitely more animated, because in that pause, I was very quickly, remember, it processes 11 million bits per second. I was activating this image of what I wanted to show up as in the intensity, and that's what you heard. This is how you can take your live talking to another level, because you're able to infuse different inflections with it. So go ahead and let's do that for 15 seconds. Just pause and add some plan inflection and enthusiasm for the next line that follows the pause. And if you just joined, we're going to start this again in about 8 minutes, 7 minutes. The actual exercise only takes about 8 minutes, but I'm also answering questions in the chat, so it's taking a little bit longer. Normally, I'll just do the, see, did you hear that? I just said, Normally, I'll do the chat answering at the break. but I like questions because if you have the question, somebody else is going to benefit from it as well. So now we did the leveraging the pause. So we just now strengthen that neural pathway. Remember, the pause is us keeping our mouth shut. The old path of least resistance was in between the words, we had to verbalize, like, you feel me? Now we're using a silence, which requires a neural pathway, different muscle memory, vocal cords, this muscle memory, right? So we're not vocalizing anything. The next one is to use a new commentary. So I was on the one about the motorcycles connecting. I'll come up with something different now. The reason for the new commentary, we're now deepening, strengthening that neural pathway. This is like deep practice. Remember I mentioned the 7 factors: novelty, intention, progression, balance, precision, struggle at the edge of ability, intensity. Those factors come into play with deep practice. Not all of them. You don't need all of them for deep practice, but we are using small spots, right, with intention. And that's where the deep practice happens because you're paying attention to it. I'll do a different commentary now. One of the reasons that I was able to connect some of these dots is because going way back to childhood, when I was 5 years old, my sister told me that if I said, I know I can, I'll be able to ride my bicycle. I was trying to teach myself to ride a bike. My father was an undercover police officer, and so he wasn't home a lot. I was mechanically inclined. I'd take the training wheels off. I'd take them off, I'd put them back on, take them off, put them back on, trying to ride. When she told me that day, I ran around the house. I know I can. That day I got on the bike and I rode. Most of our conditioning happens from 0 to 7. Here I am at 5 years old, having this breakthrough that, gee, if I say I know I can, I can do anything. Led to a lifelong study of why does it work sometimes and why doesn't it work other times. Neuroplasticity is the answer. All right, there you go. Now do yours, a new commentary. The reason for doing a new commentary is just to push you a little bit. So let's do that, 15 seconds. And now the next one is create a new association for the old cue. So this is what I call the picture swap. Now, this is one of the reasons I had to do the pilot, because I'm going to my pad, and the pad is a lot easier to do when I'm only on one streaming platform. I'm on 2, so I have to do a few things here. But let's first pull up the pad. So we're going to, bam, there's my pad. And now I have to do that. And I just realized that I had the pad up on my other one. So let me just do this real quick. We're going to switch over to here, and I'm going to scroll through. This is for the people on Facebook and YouTube, so bear with me, the TikTok folks. So if you want to do some screenshots, save some screenshots if you're on Facebook, or let's go to this one, Facebook or YouTube. So there's one. And then we went here. Then we did the 3 kinds of habits. And we talked about that reactive habits are harder to change because you're reacting. You're already fight or flight. Identity habits are hard to change because they're constructs. Then we talked about the network of neurons being on the left, the side A, that's the fast side, 11 million bits per second. It used to be called a conscious, people still do refer to it as a subconscious mind, but it's not a mind. And it's certainly not the higher self. That's why it's called sub. And then there's the conscious mind, which is over on the second half second. And the present moment is when you can have space in between there. So your reaction is not becoming your response. When you see people triggered, their reaction is just simply becoming their response. And that's why they can become so irrational, because what they're doing is conversing with inside their own head. Then we have the high impact, low effort when you do this on the first 600 milliseconds, because you're dealing with 11 million bits per second processing. By the time it gets to the conscious mind, this side is off and running all that momentum. How do you stop it? You don't. This is why people get triggered, hijacked, etc. And then in the transition, it's going from signal to words. And we have, this is the framework that you can remember. So right here is where about, and now that I have to say this, if you're a neuroscientist, you know already that I'm laying this out in a very linear fashion. It's not that way. This is like, imagine a feedback loop, of ongoing feedback loop. There's a lot of looping that's going on because it's checking, it's going, it's checking, it's going, it's checking, it's going. It's like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But that's hard to understand at 11 million bits per second. You'll also notice I don't talk about the parts of the brain. You can't activate the amygdala on purpose. You can't activate you can't activate the hippocampus or stop it from activating. And this is where cognitive biases come into play, which is why you can't stop them. By the time you're aware of them, cognitive biases are already off and running. This is where your reticular activating system kicks in here. Silence and a breath, small adjustments first. And the breathing is huge. That's what you do here. Now, if you look at emotional intelligence, a lot of it talks about regulation. And that regulation happens in the conscious mind side after you're aware. But if you're being triggered, it's too late. The breath does a lot more work when you can catch it early, like in the high impact, low effort, when you can take that deep breath here. So what we do is, guess what? We use neuroplasticity to condition in the breath. When you start getting triggered, we condition a deep breath. So you don't think about it. It happens automatically. The same way if you put your finger in fire, you pull it back. You don't have to think about it. It happens automatically. So we condition in the correct reaction rather than going with the reaction that you learn from 0 to 7. And that's what we're going to do here in a minute with the picture swap. I'll show you how to do that. And then we went through here. So again, I'm running through these because I didn't have these up on the other platform. So we had, why do you use filler words? Then you have to have a reason and intentionally add a pause, do that exercise. And then we said you're going to leverage the pause by adding emotion, or maybe you can change it up, or maybe you can add a word to it. And then we're going to do a new commentary, something completely different. You can describe what you had for dinner, what you're going to eat tomorrow, whatever it is. And that's so that we deepen that neural pathway, because now when we go into the picture swap, what we're going to do is make this the new path of least resistance. And that's the thing that's been on the slide for the folks who are on Facebook and YouTube. What you're going to do next is you have a picture of not saying and of course it could be like, it could be but just before. You want the picture to be just before. So like here, just before you say it. And this is an associated picture. What that means is you're looking through your eyes. Maybe you see your hands, but you don't see your face. Maybe you see your nose, but maybe you're looking at a screen like you're in a Zoom call. You're before the you're looking, and before the if you've edited any of your videos, you know about where you say but essentially it's like about where you're coming up with a new sentence or a new paragraph. It's when there's new information. A lot of people, every time they start talking, and then they talk, like if you're on Zoom and somebody's going to talk, because it's become a habit. It's become a path of least resistance. The reason why you want it just before is because we're going to set in an intervention right here. This is like putting your hand up to the dog and say, stay. The dog gets ready to move, stay. That's what's happening here. You know what it looks like when he gets ready to move. You don't wait until it's walking all the way over to you and say, stay. You say, stay as soon as it starts to move. That's the associated picture. The second picture you have to make to do this swap is a picture that has to do with your goal. Remember in step 2, I said, why do you want to do it? What do you want to change? What's the goal? What's the reason? Why do you want, if you don't want to get rid of your no worries. It's on you, right? But if you do have a reason, that is going to be tied in here. Maybe you see yourself having your doing live TikToks or different platforms, and maybe seeing yourself reach some sales goals because now you're adding video as well as to your post, etc. And you're not having to use artificial intelligence to create your videos. You're able to star in them yourself, which is really cool. So that's the second picture. Now, what we'll do is, as this picture's coming up, remember, this process is at 11 million bits per second. So as this picture's coming up, within a tenth of a second, you're going to blow it up with this one. This picture starts in the very small corner. In that first tenth of a second, blow it up and say, bam. I'm going to say, bam. The reason we do the sound is because we want to bring more senses into it. It's just like you push your hand up and you say, stay. You can say stay, you can put your hand up. But by saying stay, you're also connecting it there. And if you think about bam, it's definitely going to be a big interrupt. So I will count to 3. When I get to 3, I want you to bring this picture up. And then immediately I'm going to tell you, replace it. Blow up the new one. 1, 2, 3. Bring up this picture. Bam! Blow up the new one. And then reset. Again. 1, 2, 3. Bring up the bam! Blow up the new one. Blow it up with the new one. And one more time. You're about to say somebody asked you a question, you're getting ready to talk, you feel that blow it up, bam! This picture explodes to the other one. So you see what's going on is within that less than a tenth of a second, we're replacing the picture of you getting ready to say with a dissociated picture. You're over there, and it blows up this one. That's the pattern interrupt. Now, sometimes people think, okay, so now this happens, I'm not going to say anymore. Well, I wish it was that easy. If it was that easy, I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now. Let me just fix this again, and we're going to reset, and I need to reset this. That's the thing I have to remember, is that I'm resetting both platforms. For those of you just joining, this is a pilot. I'm actually practicing for tomorrow. I had to flesh out my timing and also the technology and listen to the recording and make sure the sound is okay. And now, a lot of people think, okay, now I'm not going to say anymore. Well, I wish it was that easy. If it was a mind and you're negotiating with your mind, that may happen. But it's not a mind. It's a network of neurons. Now we have to let the neuroplasticity kick in. Neuroplasticity kicks in overnight while you're sleeping. A little bit will happen right away, but the majority of it happens when your brain can rest because it's resetting. And by the way, a lot of times, if you notice, if you're doing something new and big, if you're a founder, you're starting a new business, you left your job and you're creating something new, sometimes at night you are worn out. You think, this is not working. Nothing's going to happen. I should give up. Next morning you wake up with breakthrough ideas. One reason is because your neuroplasticity has to kick in. You tried something and it didn't work. And now your neuroplasticity is catching up. And the next day, it goes from, oh my gosh, it's not going to work, to here's some solutions. Get used to the feeling of cognitive dissonance at night because it does accompany the neuroplasticity. The next thing we need to do is practice. You only have to practice 2 to 3 minutes a day. Ideally, if you can practice 2 times a day, and for those people just joined, I'm going to do this exercise again one more time. If you can practice twice a day, just what we've done, you could read something. You can intentionally be on the phone with somebody and intentionally just pause. You're layering in this new habit, this creating a new path of least resistance, so pausing becomes natural. And the second thing you want to do is start using the pause to create some imagery to add inflection or excitement. So I'm doing that right now, real time. I'm saying excitement, but I'm going to add some excitement because it processes at 11 million bits per second. I don't know how long my audio interface went off. So yesterday, this is why I do the pilots. On Friday when I did this, I had my USB-C connected to my audio interface, and I got some static, some hiss sound. So this time I disconnected it, but didn't think that I probably needed to put in fresh batteries. And when my audio interface went out, that means you all, I don't know how long I've been talking and nobody could hear what I was saying. So if you are just now in here, just tell me if you've been here for the whole time, how long it's been. I'm just curious. But I'll have to figure out another way to get rid of that hiss because you can't replace the audio. It's not even a recording. There's nothing there. There's nothing that I can do with that audio because this is the only place I was taking audio from. Oh, no, wait, I take that back. It was going into my StreamYard, maybe, because, nope, it's not, because my audio was selected differently. So this is why we do pilots, and this is why we test things, and this is why you train yourself in such a way that you don't go into fight or flight. It is what it is, right? But now here's the next slide I want to show you. This is like homeostasis. We're in our zone. We have an upper limit and a lower limit. This is what we're used to. Homeostasis, the same thing, the habit patterns. Joe Dispenza talks about crossing the river. I use this barrier here. This barrier is where you get the cognitive dissonance. It's created from all our paths of least resistance, but they're paths of least resistance that make us stop. They're the ones that the stories, the habit patterns, maybe getting bullied or getting cheated. Sometimes it's even the good experiences. They're so good that they prevent us from doing anything else. Yeah, I can see now I'm starting to get more people coming in, probably because the audio was out. TikTok stopped sending people. I'm surprised I didn't get a message from them. Am I still on? Anyway, we have the good experiences can keep people from trying new things. Could be discrimination, getting bullied, violence, whatever. All these things create this cognitive dissonance. So now you're in here in the homeostasis, going along business as usual. This is why we do the 4 pillars of self-mastery. When you start crossing this, the first thing that happens is you get this crazy cognitive dissonance because you're breaking through, and every breakthrough is preceded by confusion or some break with the past. And that break with the past is taking us into something that's not familiar. The unfamiliarity creates stress. That stress can create this cognitive dissonance that we have when we're trying to cross the barrier. When you get used to the cognitive dissonance showing up as you're breaking through, because remember, breaking through brings unfamiliarity. When you get used to it, you realize, oh, it's just time for me to take a break. You do something else, you get a good night's sleep. Now you have ideas. It's almost as though when you're about to break through, when you're knocking on the door, the fear associations pop up. Don't do it. This will hurt you. You're going to hurt. This is bad. Don't do it. Don't do it. But that's neuroplasticity taking place because you're already doing it. While you're sleeping, the neuroplasticity takes place, the neurons, the new associations are built, and you wake up the next day with the newfound confidence and, hey, I can actually do this. You literally feel like you've flipped from, this is scary, it's not going to work, I better stop, I don't want to fail, to boom, we got ideas, man, let's run full speed ahead. And you get used to that, and you no longer feel that feeling. The other thing is, anxiety and excitement can have the same signature. It's all energy going through neural pathways. So if you have the same, if it has the same signature, this excitement about breaking through can trigger anxiety neurons. But now that you understand it, you have some tools in your toolbox that you can use to preempt it by creating paths of least resistance. This is the allostasis. When you break through, you're no longer in the homeostasis, stability at the status quo. We are now allostasis territory, consistency through stability, stability on an upward trajectory. And this is where we get into the state mastery, but you also have to go into pillar 4, which is performance hygiene. Performance hygiene, there's a lot in there: hydration, nutrition, breathing, physiology. You have to move the lymphatic fluid. You have to reduce the amount of oxidative waste because that's toxic. And when you have a toxic internals, your cells go into protective mode, and cells are either in protective mode or seeking nutrients. They don't do both. They can't have the 2 different configurations. They only are either in seeking growth and nutrients, or they're seeking protection. So we have to have performance hygiene. And if you are dehydrated, you're going into fight or flight. You now have toxicity. And also, if you are dehydrated, remember the brain gets its nutrients and oxygen from the blood. If you're dehydrated, the blood is thick. Thick blood travels more slowly. That means the brain is not getting the nutrients that it needs. It's not getting the oxygen that it needs. When you wake up in the morning, that brain fog you feel, I have nothing against drinking coffee, but just try this experiment for a few days. You can still drink the coffee, but give yourself 5 minutes. Drink a half a liter of water at least, preferably a full liter, but drink a half a liter of water and just see what happens in 10 minutes. You will find that brain fog lifts. Why? Because now your blood is flowing and you're getting the nutrients and oxygen to the brain. When you go give blood, they have you drink water and then they take the blood. It's like the hydration happens that quickly. Yes. So that performance hygiene, hydration, nutrients, deep breathing, but also forgiveness. That's a big one, because if you haven't forgiven yourself for things that you did when you were 5 and 10 and 15, and you haven't forgiven other people for the things they did to you, and it's not about morality. It's about closing up those wounds, those little T wounds, so that they are not available to be pushed as buttons. That's the performance hygiene one. And that gets us to why I talk about the pressure curve. What we're doing is we're creating automaticity, passive least resistance, to stay in this optimal pressure. If we leave it to the external world, we're going to be triggered into overwhelm. And when you get here, that's like that red mist. I talk about with combat firefights, that red mist where people lose access to the best version of themselves. Over here, this is boredom. It's like not enough excitement, not enough engagement. And we're not subject. We don't have to be subject to the external world. We can manage all of this. Even though external things are coming, we have paths of least resistance that keep us inside this optimal pressure. For those of you joining, I will do one more set through the uhs and ums, because that's the reason we're here. It'll take us about 8 minutes. I have been answering questions and going deeper into neuroplasticity, but I do want to do a clean one where I'm just focusing on the steps, and we'll do that. The next thing I do is I've got the 7-step reset, and this 7-step reset is step 1 and 2 is pre-stimulus. This is happening before stimulus. So keep in mind, we have about 30,000 stimulus reaction response cycles a day. Each of those stimulus reaction response cycles is going through this cycle right here. Now, most of those are unconscious, right? 95% of everything we do is done by habit. So it's not like we're seeing this, we know that we're going through those stimulus reaction response cycles. This is step 2. And between the two of them, I mentioned levers. You have the levers of beliefs, neuroplasticity, priming, mindset, physiology, and allostatic capacity. And then step 2 is checking your coherence and your HRV, high heart rate variability. When heart rate variability is high, that correlates with high coherence. Now, you're not going to change coherence in a major way in a moment. You want to be managing this. This is where you're hydrating regularly and you're getting your exercise and your outdoor activity, because as we keep coherence high, we reduce the amount of chaos in our lives and we reduce the amount of rigidity. So this is like a dashboard. Now, I may not be able to change my coherence a lot, but I can still improve my pre-stimulus. I can use my physiology. I can stand up or sit up tall. I can use my priming. I could think about the more positive things. I can use the word yet in the things I cannot do to help me get into a growth mindset. So I can use these levers to return to a growth mindset in an instant, because at 30,000 stimulus reaction response cycles a day, we're awake 65,000 seconds a day. We're basically having another stimulus reaction response cycle coming up in another second. Now, all of them are not threat oriented, but we want to be ready for that next threat oriented one. Then step 3 is the stimulus reaction response cycle, but the response is actually step 4. So we go through the cycle. This is a handoff. This hands off to the conscious mind. That's the step 4. Step 5 is emotional modulation. Out of scope for today. Step 6, I will get into it on the masterclass. Step 6, do it, delay it, delegate it, discard it. The reason I put it in there is because if we're managing this from a 33,000 times a day, you don't know what the next big stimulus is. You don't want to be lingering and having stress responses like just lingering and occupying your brain. You want to clear that deck. You want to clear that deck so the next one that comes in, you're ready. And then step 7 is return to mindfulness. So you can literally focus on step 7, back to mindfulness, check my dashboard, how's my coherence, let me leverage check my beliefs, neuroplasticity, priming mindset, physiology, allostatic capability. I'm ready for that next stimulus that's going to come. And that's your four pillars of self-mastery. And this is about allostatic neuroplasticity and the performance hygiene. I mentioned the forgiveness. Forgiveness is one that's often overlooked because people just don't want to do it. But how many times have you heard that people have had illness because they carry around resentment? We don't need that. Why? You being angry at somebody does not change them. And I said it's not about morality. It's not. It's about performance hygiene. It changes you. So let's forgive all that stuff. Get rid of it. And sometimes it takes layers. Sometimes you have to forgive and you only make a little bit of progress. Then you forgive a little bit more. Forgive a little bit more. And I'm not saying forget. I'm not saying open yourself up to more harm. I'm saying just forgive them. Get rid of the baggage. If you never want to see them again, fine. I recommend boundaries. But all I'm saying is don't keep carrying around that pain, because these are tied to relationships, that forgiveness. And that creates a problem, because somebody could remind you, they use a word or a phrase and reminds you of something that someone said when they hurt you, and next thing you know, you're going down this spiral. So that's it. 7stepreset.com/live. That's where you go for more information. You can watch this thing there, the masterclass. You also, on that page, you'll find upcoming events. You can watch and interact live there. Roundtable option. So if you want to have some discussion, if you're a coach or practitioner, you want to go deeper, you're a neuroscientist, and you want to challenge on some of the things I've said, and everything I will probably very quickly concede, because I understand the neuroscience, but I'm teaching this in a way that it's easy for lay people to understand. I don't want to get into the parts of the brain. If I spend too much time in how it's really more of a feedback loop rather than a linear thing, we lose people. If I spend too much time talking about how it's different for everybody, then it's like people start writing it off. What I'm wanting to do is get people to understand how to apply neuroplasticity, and then let them carry them further. Also, collaboration inquiries. I will be inviting people to join me on stage for these talks, and then a private group for coaches. I have a private group on Facebook and one on LinkedIn for coaches where we do training every day. So I'm going to pause here. Let me set my clock, and I'm going to go through the exercises this time and stay on track. So I won't answer comments in the chat because it'll throw me off on the timing. Not that it throws me off, but it's not going to be a real point of what, it's not going to be a representation of the timing for what I'll do tomorrow morning, because tomorrow morning when I do it, I'm not going to be answering questions. So that is it. Let me see if anybody has any questions at all. Any questions at all. Feel free to tap the screen, give me a few hearts and likes. Just let TikTok know I'm not talking to myself. That will be helpful. And I see that I have a few. I've heard that prediction, but yeah, so the prediction is there. I think I've answered those questions. Let me know if you're still out there. If anybody's still out there, just type in hi or here, or give me a thumbs up, something, click something, a heart maybe, just so I know that people are out there, because I can't tell. And then on the same, when the Facebook or YouTube, if you guys are out there, put something in the comments. And I'm going to open up my phone line so that you can call in. I'm going to do that at the end of this next exercise. So if you don't want to come online, you can always call. And I'm going once, going twice, going 3 times, nothing there. I'm going to jump in and start with my slide. All right, welcome to the mini master class on how to stop saying like, and other filler words. You know, you feel me, whatever it is. Sometimes it's just sounds. So we're going to get rid of those. Now, this is not about morality. You're fine if you want to say it doesn't hurt me at all. But there's some people who want to go live, and maybe that's one of the things that's in the way, is that they don't like the way that they deliver. Maybe they're having trouble getting some enthusiasm. So not only am I going to show you how to stop saying live, stop saying I just think about my clock. Not only will we show you how to stop saying uhs and ums, but I'm also going to show you how to add enthusiasm and inspiration into your speaking real time. So first we have to talk a little bit about habits. Now habits, there's 3 types of habits. Behavioral, these are the habits that are, or actions that are done with the senses. You bite your nails, you say these are behavioral type habits. Maybe you pull on your ear. These are behavioral things that we can change. Then there's reactive habits. These are the hijacks that take you off course. So a lot of times it's something serious. It might be you get into fight or flight, and the cognitive bias gets you into thinking about scarcity or reacting to authority. These are reactive habits. I've seen people where they cower just because somebody's standing there with confidence. They tend to stoop down a little bit. Those are reactive habits. Those are harder to change in a situation like this. If we were one-on-one and I could ask you questions, we could get to the reactive habits pretty quickly. There's 4 layers of reactivity habits. Obviously, some are easier than others. The worst one would be the crashing out. Crashing out would be a reactive habit. That would be a little bit more difficult to change, not because it's impossible to change, but because we have to do some work, and I have to do some separation for the person. Because if you think about like a phobia, just thinking about the snakes will make them crash out. And then identity habits. Identity and personality habits are constructs. You don't change those at the construct level. You change them at the elements level. This is why those are hard to change, because they're constructs. There's 100 billion neurons connected to thousands of other neurons. All those associations come into play when it gets to our personality. Now, here's the big breakthrough. Most of the literature that you can find on changing habits, personal development, self-improvement, it lives over here in the conscious mind. Conscious mind processes at 50 bits per second. The network of neurons processes at 11 million bits per second. In between there is the transition or the conversion from a signal to words. The conscious mind processes in words. The network of neurons processes in signal. The conscious mind doesn't interpret signal, so it has to convert it into something that can be perceived by the conscious mind, and that's why you need that present moment. If you are triggered, and you can see a person being triggered, I call this a 1-second model, but if you see somebody being triggered, it's happening a lot faster. A person can go through a stimulus reaction 6 or 7 times in 1 second if they're being triggered. That's a person crashing out. That's why when you start talking to them, it's meaningless, because they're reacting to their own reactions, and it's happening very quickly. We need that present moment. I won't get into it today, but that's part of the work that we will touch on. Now, this is the 1-second model. So you have the 1/2 second reaction time for the conscious mind to come online, and that's an average. Before that, you have a 1/2 second. It's not just nothing going on. This is the subconscious, the network of neurons processing, looking at what the past, looking at what's the path of least resistance, getting information from the reticular activating system. Cognitive biases and reticular activating system, that happens over here. Uhs and ums, it happens here. That's why it's a little bit easier to change. And then in here, we have a variety of different stimuli that are stimulus reactions that happen. The bottom line is, the earlier you catch it, the higher the impact and the lower the effort, because we're operating with 11 million bits per second. Once you get it over here in the conscious mind, you're trying to wrestle all this activity with the 50 bit per second engine. It's very difficult. And then this is what we're doing. We're focusing on the reaction formation, and here we go. So first thing you're going to do is, why do we use filler words? It's some version of this. As an elementary school kid, you probably were asked a question. The teacher wants the answer. You look up at the ceiling. They say, what are you looking at the ceiling for? The answer's not up there. That kind of stings for that 6 or 7 year old. So they learn, oh man, I don't like that. And they notice that their classmates, they say, and that holds off the teacher, keeps them at bay. They give you a little bit of grace. So you start saying, there's something else that happens. When you say, remember that side that processes at 11 million bits per second? It's checking out your neurons. It's finding the answer. This is why when you say, you get an answer, like instant reward. Now we're saying, and people don't even know they're saying, let alone why. And it's not just it's verbal pauses, things like that. But it's happening in the network of neurons. This is why you can't just decide that I'm going to stop saying and have it happen, because it's a path of least resistance in the network of neurons. The next thing, we have to have a reason to do it. Why do you want to change it? Purpose, vision, goal. Maybe you want to go live. Maybe you want to start doing video. Maybe you don't like the idea of using artificial intelligence to create your videos. Maybe you just want to get better at using the teleprompter. Maybe you don't want to have so many edits to have to do in between posts, whatever. Some reason, you've got to have some reason to do it. Don't do it for me. Don't do it because I'm saying I want to stop saying I did that a long time ago. I've done this with a lot of people. And if you don't have a why, it's not going to be as productive. Then here's now the work. So that was all intellectual. Now we're actually doing the work. So from here forward, you are doing the exercises with me. The first one, we're going to say some narrative and intentionally add a pause. So I'm going to talk about how some of the breakthroughs that I was having, I'd already been studying. See, I'm intentionally pausing. I had been studying versions of neuroscience. What helped me accelerate it. So you see, I just intentionally put it on pause. That's what I want you to do. Do that for 15 seconds. Maybe if you can act like you're on the phone, if you don't want to be obvious, if you're in a Starbucks or something, just act like you're on the phone and build a pause, intentionally pause. 15 seconds, go ahead, 7 more. All right, so that's the first exercise. What we just now did was we created a new pathway. Remember, habits are the path of least resistance. The first thing, you don't break an old habit because those pathways are designed to keep you alive. They're very sturdy, very difficult to disrupt. There's a process which we can get into. We'll do that next week or on Thursday. But we just created a new neural pathway. It's a little weak one. Now we have to strengthen it. So the next step is to start making it eligible for a path of least resistance. This time you're going to leverage the pause. So that time we put in the pause. Now we're going to leverage the pause. So I'll demonstrate. I was talking about neuroplasticity. And the thing where I started having breakthroughs. I was working on a motorcycle course. I was applying neuroscience principles. And there's a thing in motorcycle racing and track. We call it survival reactions. And it clicked one day that the survival reactions were neural pathway impulses. And you can see the training of where those survival actions came from. So that way, that time I was pausing and I was also thinking about how can I make this next statement a little bit more energetic. So now do the same thing, 15 seconds, just creating motion. Use the pause to create emotion. Use the pause to create some inflection. Use the pause to create some imagery so that your delivery is strengthened. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I will answer them, especially after I'm done, which is just going to be in a minute or two. Now, the next one. Now we're going to do a new commentary. So this, you did the pauses, then we used emotion. I'm assuming you were talking about the same thing, but now you can talk about a different commentary. I'll switch it up. I'll talk about what I'm going to eat for dinner. I love making chicken thigh and leg quarters, chicken quarters. That chicken, I cook it differently each time. Almost always include it with broccoli. When I make steak, I usually use spinach salad, but not just any spinach salad. Eggs, cheese, tomatoes, mushrooms, Italian dressing. So there I was actually thinking about how can I make this more exciting while I'm doing the pause. And then the next one is the big one. So we're going to switch up the gears a little bit. I have to go to the pad. So we're going to, and I'm on 2 platforms, by the way, so I have to change the pad. So to switch it up, now we've talked about making it a path of least resistance, but now we have to do something else. We have to stop the old path. Performance issue detected. Try turning off the background, improve live performance. No, it's still working. Okay, cool. So here's what we're going to do. You make 2 pictures. The first picture is just before you say So if you imagine training a dog to sit and then you're going to teach them to stay, this is like just as they start getting up from the sitting position, you say stay. You put your hand up, stay. And that tells them to stay. And you're doing both. You're making a motion and you're also saying something. So that's one picture. Just before you say maybe it's when you start talking. Maybe it's someone asks you a question. Maybe when you are changing the topic. That one is associated. So you're looking at yourself. You see your hands. You don't see your face because you're associated, looking through your eyes. Maybe you're looking at the screen for a Zoom call. The second picture is having to do with your goal, aspiration, your vision, something that you want to do, something that you want to accomplish. And this one is dissociated. So you're looking at yourself over there. And the idea is a picture swap. I'm going to count to 3. And when I count to 3, I want you to bring this picture up. And as you bring that one up, within 1/10 of a second, I'm going to say, add the new one. And I want you to say, bam. I'm going to say, bam. And if you're in Starbucks, you can say, bam. And that bam is like, stay. So bring up that first picture, blow it up, bam. There you go. Reset. Bring up that first picture you're about to say, blow it up, bam. Reset. Bring up that first picture, bring it up, replace it, bam. So that's the interrupt. Now, what we've done is interrupt the pattern so that when you're saying you will become aware of it. That's not going to stop you from saying You actually have to practice. Neuroplasticity happens overnight. And all we did was lay the scaffolding. Now you're going to have to, overnight or through practice, 2 or 3 times a day. 1 to 2 times a day, total of 3 minutes. Just practice what we did. The pause, use it, leveraging the pause, and then also the bam. You do that for 2 minutes. And you're reinforcing that pathway will become the path of least resistance. And by putting in the interrupt, that's how it works. Now, this is just behavioral habits, and I wouldn't recommend just trying this willy-nilly on any behavior you want to change, because remember, your conditioning has kept you alive. It's kept you safe. It's made you successful. You don't want to just go changing things willy-nilly. All right, that is what we just did. The demonstration exercise is complete. What you just experienced, you successfully built a new neural pathway at the network level in minutes, proving that behavioral habits can be changed quickly when you bypass slow conscious willpower. Again, you may still say, what we did is not going to make you stop saying, It's going to make you aware of it, and it's going to give you a path of least resistance. Basically, it shows you the door, and it even opens the door, but you have to decide to go through it. The missing link, we only tackled behavioral habits today. Long-term growth requires mastering the deep layers, navigating high-pressure environments, and stabilizing your physiological state and shaping reactive loops. Your next step, if you want more, masterclass, Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. In that masterclass, you can visit 7stepreset.com/live. This is the hub. You'll also be able to watch it here on TikTok on Transformation After 50. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can watch it there. And I'll also be on the website, 7stepreset.com/live, and this is where most of the interaction will be. So although there will be comments on TikTok, I can't watch every chat box simultaneously, so I do limit it to the website. And what we're talking about is the 4 pillars of self-mastery. We start with the fundamentals and the levers, and then we go to habit mastery, which is, I started talking about that today, so that helps me with the masterclass for those of you who are here, and then go to the masterclass on Thursday. The next one is state mastery. And I do it in that order because you have to first believe you can change habits. You have to believe that that's possible for us. And then the next one is state mastery. And state mastery is where we stop getting triggered, where we manage our own, we're stabilized. We're no longer worried about anxiety spirals. We're doing all of this with prevention. And then performance hygiene. So in addition to things like hydration and breathing, because if you have too much oxidative waste, lymphatic fluids not flowing, that can put you into stress mode. Dehydration, stress mode. Lack of nutrition, stress mode. Too much oxidative waste, as I said, it forces the cells into a protective configuration. Your cells are not going to be in both protective and growth at the same time. So they're going to pick one or the other. And if you're toxic inside, they're going to go into that protective. So we need to have some performance hygiene. And a big one is forgiveness, because if you're carrying resentment around, you're adding stress to your system, and that's hurting you. That's going to make it easier for you to fall into this high side of the pressure curve, the overwhelmed side. We need to manage and stay inside this optimal pressure, which is very possible to do. You need to take ownership away from other people and give this to yourself. By using agency and personal leadership, you can stay in this optimal pressure zone for as long as you need to. And this is what's happening. For most people, we're in this nice homeostatic zone, upper limit, lower limit, just moving along. We start trying to rise above it. We run into this cognitive dissonance. Joe Dispenza calls it crossing the river. We hit this barrier, and it's because we're doing things that we never thought we should be able to do. We're starting to get excited. We're starting to get nervous. This is unfamiliar. Unfamiliarity connects with threats in the subconscious, the network of neurons. Even good experiences create that cognitive dissonance, just like the athlete who uses the lucky socks. You may have had such good experiences doing things a certain way that you can't try anything else. You're not able to do anything else. By using these tools and the 4 pillars of self-mastery, we can step into allostasis. This is not mystical mumbo jumbo. This is all real. It's neurobiological, and we can show you why and how it works. And your lever is to be able to change the neuroplasticity so that you have new neural pathways that are the path of least resistance. And those new paths of least resistance are what gets you to your results. And then you have the 7-step reset, which is what I'll go through. Today, we're just talking about steps 1 and 2 to a degree. Those become your dashboard. These are the levers: beliefs, neuroplasticity, priming, mindset, physiology. These are your levers. And then step 2 is your coherence. Where am I? You're taking a check. What's my HRV like? So I wake up, I always know what my heart rate variability is. And if it's low, then I'm going to govern myself accordingly. But I may have to do some more breathing. I may have to do some more hydration. I may go out and get more sunlight. I may take more breaks. You can't change your coherence and your HRV in minutes, but you can do things like breathing and hydration and exercise physiology and have an impact. So that's why I call it like a dashboard. And then step 3 is the stimulus reaction response cycle. So that is it. I'm still way over my 8-minute target, and I may have to change my target to 10 minutes. I think I will for tomorrow, because it doesn't make sense to add the stress. I get to say how much time, right? It's gamification. I could make the target anything I want. I think though 10 minutes, I'll do 10 and 15. I'll do 10 minutes for the exercise, because I could have done that in 10, and I'll do 15 minutes, then I'll start a new one. I may even do 12 and 15. We'll start a new one every 15 minutes and 12 minutes to go through the exercise. It's still a win. If you've been saying for the last 10 years and we fix it in 12 minutes, that's still a win. So I am looking at my chats. I'm looking at my comment areas. I would love to have a question, and what I'll do is experiment with this. I'm going to call myself and see if it works. So I have a call-in number. That call-in number is, I'll put it in the chat here. So 1+, so this will work on WhatsApp as well. +1 916 693 3934. So I'll put it there. And I'm also going to put it on my other platforms. I'm streaming from 2 platforms to 6 locations. So I'll put it there. And so you can call that number. If you're in the States, it's just 916-693-3934. If it's WhatsApp, just put the 1 in front of it. It should ring. And let me just take a look and my Bluetooth. Let me make sure I'm connected. Bluetooth. I am connected, so I should get the calls. I'm going to call myself. I'm probably not going to be using this tomorrow, but I have to test it anyway because eventually I'll have Skype calling in. I want to have more of a networked process where I can use Skype and see people manage the inflow, because with one phone I can only answer one line, obviously. So let's call. So it's ringing. I'm going to answer it. And then I have to turn on my interface. Why isn't it working? Oh, because I'm recording. If I'm recording, I can't turn on a new interface. There we go. So that's on. And you're welcome to call in. I'll hang up, obviously. But if you call in, I'm going to now put my headphones on and see if it's working. Testing. I see it there, but I don't see it over. That should be there. Let's try this. Testing. And I should be able to see it here if I see my audio on StreamYard. Testing. Now let's see if it's where's my phone. Testing. Yes, StreamYard can hear me. And of course, you can hear me on TikTok. And that looks like the call is going to work. I'll verify it in the recording. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So you can call 916-693-3934. I will put the call. It sounds like there's some static, some hiss in there, which that's why I was telling you before. I did having the USB connected to the. Turn that volume down. So I didn't like having the USB connected to the interface because I get the hiss, but I also need the battery. All right. That is it. Anybody chiming in here? If you're on there, just good for you. Learn anything if you want. It helps the algorithm, TikTok know that I'm not just talking to myself. And we're on the Facebook side, YouTube. Give me a thumbs up or some comment over there. I see a new message. Let's see what we got. All right. I will be live tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pacific time. We'll do this again. Less touching about plasticity because I'll be moving more toward filling the masterclass on Thursday. And that's why I would recommend you attending the masterclass on Thursday. It'll be about 90 minutes. And I will go in depth on the 4 pillars, the levers and fundamentals, the habit mastery, the state mastery, and then the performance hygiene. Some of it you've heard today. In fact, today I was on here for a total of 90 minutes. So it's about like this, but it'll be focused with an agenda, and I have slides that go with it as well. Let me know if you have any questions. And okay, for those of you who just joined, I did 2 rounds of uhs and ums. Takes me about 10 to 12 minutes to go through it. I'm going to do it again tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time, this same channel, Transformation After 50. I'm also going to be on LinkedIn. Dynamic Leadership Center is the company page where I'll be tomorrow, or Morris Momodoro, my profile. I'll also be on Facebook, Transformation After 50. And the main page for this is 7stepreset.com/live. And that's where I'll be able to focus my interaction with people who are on that website. You'll also find more information there, like upcoming events. You can watch and interact live. Roundtable option, if you have coaches and practitioners who want to go a little deeper, we'll have some options to schedule a roundtable or participate in a roundtable. Collaboration opportunities if you want to be a panelist or something like that. And then, of course, I have a private group for coaches, Dynamics of Neuroplasticity on Facebook and LinkedIn. All right, thanks for joining. I appreciate it and looking forward to hearing feedback. We'll see you.